FPL Game Week 8, my team selection. Bringing back the team selection videos means one thing and one thing only. The international break is over. So today I've still got my 2 free transfers. I haven't done anything with my team yet. We're going to have a look at my first lineup going into Game Week 8. We'll talk about some potential transfers. It is all revolving around Trent Alexander-Arnold going up against Cole Palmer. Which of them I prefer in my team this week and going forward. We'll talk about captaincy and we'll have a look at some future plans for my team, but today it's really that Game Week 8 team selection. What is up everyone, FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new around here. You can probably see the smile on my face because team selection videos means we are almost there. The international break is almost over. It's been a long one. Again, we are back with 4 game weeks of FPL on the bounce. Lots of things to look at, lots of fixture swings. So today we'll have a look at where we're at after the international break, talk about a potential couple of transfers. We'll talk about what I'm planning on doing this week, my lineup, captaincy, everything like that. Now, game week 7 does feel like a long time ago, but I haven't really updated you on how it went. So a very quick roundup. I did captain Erling Haaland and I didn't bring in Mavadidi. So captaincy blank and a transfer blank, despite me selling Luis Diaz, who didn't start for Liverpool. That was the reason we sold him on the deadline stream on that Saturday morning. But I did get 62 points overall. I had Chris Wood, I had Bukayo Saka, I had Brian and Burma, and I had Trent Alexander-Arnold. The real players to bring some decent returns to my team. It was a decent score, 12 above that safety score. Of course, that safety score is what you require to basically get a grey arrow. So anything above it means you're getting a green arrow. A good game week rank, and it gave me a green arrow. Most importantly, from 500k up 300,000 places to 220k. Now, this is a learning we're going to have every single week. There's not going to be small gains. There's not going to be small drops. Every week is going to be big swings one way or another because you're missing loads of very high quality FPL assets and good footballers in your team, right? So I don't have Watkins, Palmer or Salah. And this week I got lucky they didn't do anything, so I got a green arrow. But last week I didn't have them and they all did really well, and Saka and Haaland blanked and I did really badly as a result. So there's going to be loads of swings. Game week 7 was a nice one and it was great to have it over the international break. Something positive to look at. Now let's have a look at game week 8. So as I said in the introduction, the game week 8 transfers all revolve around buying Cole Palmer and Cole Palmer going up against Trent Alexander-Arnold. I have 2 free transfers, 2.7 million in the bank and a 220k at the moment. I have 0.1 million buffer to go and make these 2 transfers. I do think Ryan Aït-Nouri will be the sort of cheap defender I would go with. I could go up to 4.5. I could buy a Milenkovic of Nottingham Forest. Unfortunately, I can't buy Van de Ven at Spurs anymore. Although after their performance against Brighton, I'm not certain that I want to. There are a few other defenders in and around that cheap price, like Konza, like Leif Davies, that I am having a look at. However, Wolves have been pretty good going forward. Aït-Nouri is very involved in that. They've been very good in these fixtures despite having a difficult run of fixtures, and they've not been horrific defensively in some of the games. So I do think once game week 10 rolls around, he is the best one that I want. Now, game week 8 at home to Manchester City and game week 9 away at Brighton is not the fixtures I massively want Aït-Nouri in. I probably would play him away at Brighton, but in game week 8, I wouldn't play him against Manchester City. I would have the choice of either Mykolenko going up against Ipswich, or I'd have the choice of Greaves going up against Everton, so they do play against each other. At the moment, I'd probably favour Greaves just about because Mykolenko is a doubt still, and Greaves is the home fixture. So Aït-Nouri would be the cheap defender I would go with. If I had 4.6, maybe I'd consider Van de Ven, but I don't think so given their performances. So that would be Trent down to Aït-Nouri, and that would be Smith Rowe up to Cole Palmer. Both of Trent and Smith Rowe currently in my starting 11 at the moment, whereas it would be Palmer versus basically Greaves on the right-hand side, but the transfer would be to Aït-Nouri, if that makes any sense. Anyway, in terms of the transfers, I keep going back and forth about whether I think I want to make them. And the conclusion, I think, is if I don't make them in game week 8, I almost certainly will make them in game week 9. Palmer has Newcastle at home, which I think is a really nice fixture. Smith Rowe goes away to Everton, which isn't bad, but Trent does go away to Arsenal. Aït-Nouri has Brighton away versus Smith Rowe with his fixture. They're pretty close, and I do think Palmer becomes a very nice asset with Manchester United in the week after. So I do think in game week 9, I'll probably make the transfers if I don't make them in game week 8. And of course, there are potential price changes that could force me into those moves. Smith Rowe could drop again, although he's only on about minus 20% or so, so very far away from a drop. Aït-Nouri is the closest to changing in price. He's about 70% chance of a price increase. Well, 70% of the way to a price increase. Cole Palmer is about 50% as well. So at time of recording, it doesn't look like I'm going to need to make these transfers for price reasons going into the Game Week 8 deadline. However, once we get to Friday, people start opening up their FPL teams. Things could accelerate really, really fast on Thursday and particularly on Friday. So we might get to Friday, and when we talk about it in final decisions, if things are looking any different, I will let you know. But at the moment, I don't feel like I'll be forced into it from a price point of view. So I am basically looking at it, do I like it this week or do I like it next week for the same? Which do I prefer for Game Week 8? Basically, Palmer and Greaves or Trent and Smith Rowe. And just at the moment, I think I'm going to favour not using the transfers. I like Smith Rowe at home to Aston Villa. I still like Trent with his attacking threat. Of course, he scored for England. The attacking threat is definitely there. Now, a lot of it will boil down to what happens in that Liverpool-Chelsea game. If Chelsea score and look good, then I'll want Palmer and it will wipe Trent's clean sheet out. But if Trent keeps a clean sheet, he'll be the better option and Palmer will then blank. So much will revolve around that. Plus, of course, I'm a Chelsea fan. So I'm going to have so much investment, both from me, my FPL team, everything, going into that Chelsea-Liverpool game on Sunday, whether I make the transfers or not. That will decide whether these transfers were a good idea or not. But as I say, I don't imagine at the moment I'm going to be forced into make any potential transfers going into the deadline. So unless I am, and if I am, I think I'll make the moves because these are too important to not make just because there's a potential price change. So if there's a potential price change to two of those players in Smith Rowe, Palmer and Aït-Nouri, Trent is 7.1, so him dropping doesn't mean anything. If only of those two of those three change in price look like they're going to, then I'll make the moves. If they're not, then I'll probably roll into Game Week 8 and make those transfers going into Game Week 9. So then just having a look at what that means for my team at the moment. I've still got the double up on Arsenal. We've got David Raya and Gabriel in there at the moment going away to Bournemouth. I know they've not been great over the past couple against Southampton and Leicester. They did keep a clean sheet though against PSG in the Champions League. And I just see these two as long-term holds. Like every team selection video I put out between now and probably February is going to have Gabriel and Raya in unless there's a blank game week where I'm forced to sell one of them or there's a injury to one of them. Outside of that, I just don't think that I'm going to sell them. They go on a difficult run of games from about game week 9, 10 and 11. But from game week 12 onwards, it looks really, really nice again. So those two are going to be in there. I've also spoken about Rico Lewis. Now, I do think he'll start this game because he didn't start the second game for England, whereas Kyle Walker played 90 minutes. He was also very important to what Manchester City are doing. And yes, the assist in game week 7 to Doku was very lucky. He passed it sideways and Doku went and ran half the pitch and scored. But he has been getting assists in the Champions League, which have been much more sort of true assists, where he's passed it through to Haaland, for example. I do like him, and I stand by that he's the best defender under about 5.5 million that I think there is in the game. The other one I spoke about in my transfer targets video that might come close is Diego Dalot, but I don't feel like I want to invest in Manchester United just as much as the Manchester City defence are leaking. And then I don't plan on making the transfers. So I've got Trent in here, and unless there is a potential price change to two of those three players, in Smith Rowe falling, Aït-Nouri rising, or Palmer rising, if that's going to happen, then I'll bring in Aït-Nouri and I will bench Aït-Nouri for either Mikalenko if he's going to be fit, or if not, it'll be Greaves, who's currently sat third on my bench, which I don't mind. He has Everton at home. But at the moment, because the price changes don't look like they're going to happen, we're going to keep Trent. That means in my midfield, we're going to keep Smith Rowe as well. At home to Aston Villa, Smith Rowe's home form versus away form is very different. Home form is very good. He did get benched in game week 7 against Manchester City for Sander Berge, but I do think that was a very much a tactical switch to go up against the Manchester City team that they are. And I do expect that we see Smith Rowe come back into the lineup going into game week 8. Of course, there's a slight doubt there, but I do think he'll come back in. Mavididi did blank. He is a short-term punt while Semenyo has 3 difficult fixtures. Then I can bring Semenyo back into my lineup, and he's got Southampton away this week. If I was buying new, I would buy Brent Buonanotte of Leicester. I think he looks like just as good an asset, if not better. He's on some set pieces, and he's 0.3 million cheaper. But when I bought him in game week 7, we just didn't know that, so I couldn't buy him. We are benching, of course, Semenyo at home to Arsenal. We've got Brian and Burma, who's Mr. Consistent. Let's see how that Manchester United-Brentford game goes, because I find that so difficult to predict. Let me know your score predictions from Man United-Brentford in the comment section down below, because I think part of me says, well, Manchester United will probably win because they're at home. Then I look at the form and I think, well, it's definitely a Brentford win. But then I'm like, surely Manchester United turn a corner at some point, and I keep going back and forth. So I will be interested to see how that game goes. And then we've got Bukayo Saka. He's currently yellow flagged. We are expecting for him to be fine going into game week 8. The interim England manager, Lee Carsley, who will now be replaced by Thomas Tuchel. As a Chelsea fan, I'm excited to see Thomas Tuchel back managing a team I can support because I am a big fan of him. But he did say that Saka should be fine. He could have played potentially last Sunday, but they didn't want to take a risk. We will hear something from Arteta on Friday, although he rarely gives anything away. But I am expecting Saka back. Then up front, we've got Solanke and we've got Chris Wood, both with nice home games. There's absolutely no way I'm going to get rid of them. Chris Wood did play in New Zealand, but it was early on Monday morning, and they don't play until Monday evening. That is plenty of time for him to come home from international duty. Dominic Solanke as well. I'm keeping a close eye on Solanke going into this game because I have concerns of how deep he played against Brighton in game week 7. I need him to be playing further forward and in the box, playing as a number 9 and not dropping deep. He dropped deep, allowing the likes of Werner and Johnson to run in behind, and I need it to be Solanke the one scoring goals. If he is that again, I'll probably keep him for a few more weeks, but someone like Matheus Cunha, someone like a Danny Welbeck could definitely be on the radar for me. Then it is, of course, Erling Haaland, who has blanked in back-to-back games, and he's had some of the lowest underlying data we've seen from him so far this season. There is, of course, no Rodri, and we don't know at the moment at time recording if we are going to have a return for Kevin De Bruyne in this fixture. So it does concern me a little bit that Manchester City haven't been quite as good and are not feeding Haaland quite as much. But that being said, he looks like the clear favourite for captaincy again for me this week. Wolves have just conceded 5 goals to Brentford. They have still got injuries. They've still got players just not available for them going into game week 8. Bukayo Saka is the other one that I look at given how good he did in game week 7. He has the vice captain for me, but I just don't think I can look past Erling Haaland captain away at Wolves. So then just have a look at a bit of future transfer plans. I feel like I haven't done this in a while and I quite like it at the end of a video just to have a little bit more of an ad lib, a little bit more of a chat. So this is how my team is looking going into game week 8 at the moment. Of course, as I said, if we're likely to see price changes, Trent down to 8 Nori and then Greaves starting and Smith Rowe all the way up to Cole Palmer would be the plan. But at the moment, I don't plan on making those transfers. I plan on captaining Haaland, and that will be the idea going into game week 8 unless there are those price changes. Going into game week 9, I almost likely make those transfers if I don't make them in game week 8. So that will be Smith Rowe out, and then I'll bring in Cole Palmer. And it'll be Trent Alexander out, and we will go and bring in Ryan 8 Nori of Wolves. I will have a slight benching decision. I've got Mikalenko if he's available at home to Fulham. Greaves away at Brentford, I wouldn't play. And then I've got 8 Nori going away to Brighton. I don't expect a clean sheet there. Maybe Mikalenko at home to Fulham, but let's leave Ryan 8 Nori in there for now. Haaland will be in there as captain. Vice captain will probably end up on Cole Palmer once he comes in. I do like the fixture that he has at home to Newcastle that week. Now, there is a conversation to have about a Haaland triple captaincy at home to Southampton going into game week 9. As a reminder for you, at the end of the season, we're going to have less doubles. At the moment, we already only plan on having 2 double game weeks. And if you've got your free hit, you've got your bench boost, you've got your triple captain, and then, of course, the mystery chip that we are going to get at the start of the season, that might be 4 chips we want to play in double game weeks. So the triple captaincy is the least priority to play in a double, which is why people played it early on in the season on Haaland, and people might look in game week 9 to play it at home to Southampton. Now, if I was to consider playing it on Haaland in game week 9, I would need to see a very good performance from him and a very good performance from Manchester City away at Wolves. I'm concerned that he's not getting the chances, and if that happens again away at Wolves, there'd be no chance that I'd put the triple captaincy on him going into game week 9. If he scores and looks really involved and really threatening, or he scores twice, then yes, there will be a conversation to have next week. But at the moment, I don't plan on it just because I'm not confident enough on what I'm seeing from Manchester City. That will save 1 transfer going into game week 10. Things look pretty nice. I know Arsenal have a couple of difficult fixtures, but I plan on just playing him through all of those games. Newcastle, Chelsea, I just double up with Raya. I don't plan on benching them. I could play Greaves at home to Leicester, but playing him over Gabriel just feels like a really bizarre thing to do, especially when I've got Mavididi. That's fine in game week 10. Things stay the same. Game week 11 is when we start to see better fixtures for Semenyo, and the fixtures for Mavididi turn a little bit worse. So I can bring Semenyo in and I can put Mavididi on the bench for me there. Haaland will likely keep the captaincy armband for the majority of these weeks, even going into game week 11. He'll probably keep the captaincy armband. The first time I might look at doing something is then in game week 12. So I actually, if I make transfers in game week 8, plan on not using another transfer until the next international break, which I've only just realised and feels incredibly, incredibly boring, but it's just the way things have fallen, because I wouldn't have transfers I want to use until game week 12, which is when the next big fixture swing is. So In game week 12, I would look at it because Chris Wood has a difficult couple games coming up. Slankies don't look quite as good. Defensively and around there, things don't look too bad. But something like a Chris Wood, I like the look of Mateus Cunha, but of course I can't quite afford it. If I wanted to do a Cunha, I could, and I could potentially downgrade a Mavadidi to someone a little bit cheaper if I wanted to do that. Or I could potentially just go and buy Danny Welbeck. That is the current plan. I know it's a long way away, so things may well change. But let me get Welbeck up. Autocorrect into Chilwell. Danny Welbeck's fixtures from game week 12 do look really nice. They have Bournemouth away, Southampton at home, Fulham away, Leicester away, Palace, West Ham, Brentford. And it doesn't look like João Pedro is going to be back anytime soon. If he was, I could look at João Pedro, but it doesn't look like it's going to be the case. So that's the plan all the way up until game week 12. I only really have 2 transfers I plan on making between now and the next international break. And that is Smith Rowe up to Cole Palmer. And that is Trent Alexander-Arnold down to Ryan Aït-Nouri. And I might make it in game week 8. I might make it in game week 9. I think it's very unlikely that I delay it any further than that. But at the moment, the plan is game week 9. I do plan on rolling the transfer. Captain on Erling Haaland. If he does well, I'll consider the triple captaincy going into game week 9 at home Southampton. But we can discuss that more next week. Hopefully a bit more on my team. We are back. FPL is back on Saturday morning. There'll be a final decisions video where we'll go through every bit of injury news from the press conference, talk about players to buy, my team, everything, the final bits. Of course, it's called final decisions. The final bits you need to know going into game week 9 to make your teams as they are. There'll be the deadline stream on Saturday. If you are in need of a little bit of content, my new Know the Score podcast, which has been running for over a month now, please go and check it out if you haven't already. I'll link in the description. I'll put the clip up of the intro on screen now. How do you feel about them at the moment? We've spoken that we think Ten Hag needs to go if they really want to get.
I just think they're at a point now where it's like, well, what are you doing then?
But like, it didn't work under Ole. It didn't work under whoever that other guy was.
Van Gaal before that.
Van Gaal.
Moyes, Van Gaal, Ole, then Rangnick.
Oh, Rangnick, that's the one. But like, at what point is it not the manager? So if that's of any interest, go and check that out. Link in the description, link above. 2,000 likes is the aim. Drop any questions you have about your team in the comment section down below. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll be back again very soon.